My name is Clytie Fleetwood.
We're here to interview Ms. Fleetwood. I am interviewer number 1, Mike Fleetwood.
I'm interviewer number 2, Jennifer Addison, and the date is February the
19th, 2005.
2005, correct. Okay, Mike.
Where did you attend school before the Second World War, and what did you do between high school and the war?
I attended school at Floyd, New Mexico, and I went to college at Eastern New Mexico University, which was a junior college at that time.
Did you join the armed services?
No.
How did you meet your husband?
Do I have to tell?
Go ahead.
I belong to
Eastern Star.
what?
Was it Eastern Star?
No, it wasn't Eastern Star, to
Rebecca's?
Rebecca Lodge. And I had attended a meeting with another teacher, and after the meeting we went to the drugstore, which was a local hangout, for coffee and donuts. And when we ordered the donuts, there were none left. So 3 young Army or Air Force fellows across the aisle in a different booth offered to share the donuts with us. So we shared donuts, and that's how I met him.
Your husband was already in the military.
Yes.
How long was it before you married him?
Not very
From
long.
the time you met him?
That was in March, and we married in July of the same year, 1944.
And when did he leave to go overseas?
October.
Okay. What service or branch of the service did your husband join? Do you know?
Yes, the Army Air Force.
Army Air Corps.
Okay.
Well, were you a member of any church during the war years?
Yes, I was a Baptist.
Can you describe any associations you had with the church members during the war?
Well, I taught a Sunday school class, and I guess that's all.
Did Anna go to your church?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Had your husband gone through basic training and induction before you met him?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you learn anything about what that was like? Did he recall to you his experiences at all? That
Well,
you would like to share with us?
you shine my shoes.
I can't remember anything specifically that he
Okay.
Can
talked about. How long it took him to travel from to Texas to his first training center. It was about 3.5 days, I think.
Tell us your feelings about the outbreak of the Second World War. What were you doing at the time? How you feel about it?
Well, it was very sudden, I know, and we were very shocked with the surprise attack of Pearl Harbor. Of course, at that time we had no TVs, we only had radio, and that's the way we heard it. And I think it was quite frightening.
Were you with family members when you heard that news? Or were
Yes.
Was there any discussion amongst yourselves? Can you recall, the general feeling in the room and how other
Well, I
members
think
felt?
everyone was in a state of shock.
Did you have any, at that time, did you have any vision of what that might entail for you personally?
No,
and your family?
I don't think so.
Remember what Dad's induction and basic training were like? Did he share that with you?
Well, the story of his sister taking him to the train depot, and she wasn't a very good driver, and took his car, and she hit a post or something after taking him and knocked off the bumper. So she put the bumper in the trunk of the car and proceeded home.
Do you remember the unit number that your husband belonged to?
Hmm. No.
Okay.
Do you remember what kind of testing that he was put through following basic training?
No.
Okay. What were your jobs
Yeah.
throughout the war?
We haven't met then.
What did you do throughout the war while your husband was gone?
Well, I was teaching when we met, and then we lived on a farm near Portales, New Mexico, and his sister was alone in Los Angeles, so I went out and spent some time with her, and she was pregnant with her second child, so I went out and took care of her 2-year-old, and I worked in an airplane factory out there at some time.
What was your job in that plane factory?
I insulated I did insulation, fiberglass insulation around, I guess, the air ducts, because they were quite big ducts that I...
Did you
Go ahead.
Did you feel like you were contributing to the war effort in this particular job that you were
Yes.
doing? How did you feel about your contribution?
Well, that everyone else was doing the same thing.
Can you tell us about any of the leaders of that time, national, military, church leaders, even within your own family, that were admired or influenced your dad?
Well, I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the only, he seemed to be the most, and then some of the generals were discussed, but communication then wasn't
Like it is today.
as prevalent as it is today, and we only had the radio to rely on.
Roosevelt's fireside chats.
Pardon?
Roosevelt's
Yes,
fireside chats.
yes. And all I remember is my dad disliked him very much and said he always knew about the war before it actually happened, and it was later revealed that he did. So,
When your husband saw combat, did he write letters home about what he was doing or where he was? Did you
well,
have an
everything
understanding
was
of that?
censored, and there would be letters that would be censored, and so many lines would be cut out. And I have all of his letters that he wrote while he was over there.
Can you share some of your experiences with us, how you felt as you received those letters from him? Can you share any experiences of how you felt when you received letters from...
Oh yes, I was
Oh.
overjoyed.
Did you read them more than once?
Oh, sure. And we had a local postman that, of course, we were out on general delivery, and he would always yell at me that I had so many letters that day.
They put in the paper there that I received the air medal.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Well, she's got a copy of that at home.
Yes.
Did any of your friends, your husband's friends, or your friends all return home from the war?
No, I lost many friends in the Pacific. One of my best friend's husbands was killed, and I think there were at least 9 that I went to school with or had known in growing up. We were a very close-knit community.
I was going to ask you, how do you think this affected the community?
Well, they were very saddened because we lost numerous boys just out of high school. Some were on the Bataan Death March, and then one was a pilot who went down in the South Pacific.
Did your husband ever write to you in his letters whether he felt like there was some kind of divine intervention or protection for him and his crew?
Oh gee, I'm sure he did, but I can't remember anything specifically.
Did you ever worry at any time about the ultimate outcome of the war? Or
No, I think we were more interested in who was going to get home, who would come home, and who didn't.
Did any of those worries affect your strength in the Lord, strengthen or weaken your spirituality?
I've always had a very strong faith, so I don't know that it did.
Okay. Can you, for the moment, recall any vivid memories of what it was like to be on the home front?
Yeah, you didn't have any. Is this going on?
Just waiting, I think.
Yeah.
But and then
No night-ons, no gasoline?
we had several family members in service. I had one, two, at least 5 cousins who were in service at the same time, and they all returned.
Your husband brought up a good point. He said there was rationing, lack of gasoline.
Yes,
Why don't you tell us about that experience?
We didn't. We couldn't buy sugar, and my dad went to Mexico to get sugar, which was looked kind of like sand. It was very unrefined, and we stored it in the attic of our house, and it rained and got wet. Then there was also a shortage of gasoline. Everybody was rationed with gasoline, and since we lived on the farm, we had what they called
T-stamps, truck stamps.
Well, we had coupons for gas, and when those coupons were gone, then you weren't able to get any more. But we had fuel for the machinery, the tractors, and any other farm machinery that you needed. But they put a coloring in it so that you couldn't use it in your cars. It was called blue gas, so that you couldn't, you weren't supposed to use it in your cars.
I had the bluest carburetor in the country.
So you had family members that were at home contributing to the farm effort?
Well, my brother, he was too young. He was only 17 when the war started and had married, so he didn't have to go, but several others did.
Just for the record, I've got here in front of me the unit name was Unit 20th Air Force 58th Wing.
444th?
The 444th Bomb Group, and they were the 677th Squadron. So I'm just reading that for the record.
Okay.
Okay, and the 3 squadrons were made up of a group, and that's how they were formed. Excellent. Okay, Mike?
How frequent do you remember your contacts or letters from Dad while he was serving?
Well, he wrote almost every day,
I wrote 6 one day.
and there would be periods due to mail delivery, because mail delivery did not have priority over supplies at that time. So I might get half a dozen one day, and then maybe go days. And I kept a scrapbook of all the missions that were connected with B-29s. After he returned home, he said those were not always true.
Disinformation.
And I'd look at the number, because so many would go down. each mission, and if everybody returned from the mission, why, of course, we were elated.
I know they were probably all precious to you, the letters, but were there any that were particularly memorable, anything that stood out?
Well, I think the one that stood out most was the one in India where he said the lifespan was 27 years and he had to hurry and get home before he was 21. And he wanted to get home before he was 27.
Good point.
Can you describe the morale of the country during the war?
Well, I think it was very upbeat because everybody contributed, I think, in some way, if they were able. Try to keep my hands off my face. And
You're doing great.
Was there any aspect of life during the war that you miss?
you mean during that time?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Or what part of that life did you miss the most?
being apart, I think, would be. Of course, life went on. We still worked and
Raise the children.
raised children. Of course, I didn't have any children at that time, and I lived with my parents while he was away, except the time I spent with his sister.
Concurrently, what part of that time during the war would you miss the least? What would you not care about?
What part would I not care about?
Or not miss? Probably that the rationing was over and you didn't have to have that anymore.
Well, but after he came home, we still were not able to buy a refrigerator because all the plants were geared toward war equipment. So they stopped producing cars, refrigerators, stoves, anything made with metal. And we didn't have a refrigerator for, how long?
We couldn't buy one out in California.
And then we just had an ice box once we went back to New Mexico. So probably, but we didn't suffer. I mean, everybody.
She had shoes.
Yeah, silk hose. He sent me silk hose on his way to India. They stopped in South America, and he sent me 3 pair of silk hose. And his sister was so angry because he didn't send her any.
Get you some shoes. I didn't have ration stamps, but how did I get you shoes?
I didn't know you bought me shoes.
No, yeah, I got you shoes.
But,
Where were you when the war ended?
in New Mexico with my folks.
How do you remember how you felt when you heard the news?
Oh, we were overjoyed. My sister-in-law and I walked to the back of the field where my mother and dad were to tell them about it. So we had quite a celebration, and then they took me to California then because we knew he would be home soon.
And how did you feel when he phoned you?
Oh, related. So,
How long from that first phone call till the time you met again?
well, I think about 3 days, 2 days or 3 days.
Tell us about the reunion when you and Dad first got back together when he came home.
Well, another airman, his wife, who lived in L.A., called me and said she'd come by and pick me up, and we drove to the train depot and we met them there. And then they took us back to Hal's aunt, and she loaned us her car. And we went to Long Beach, I know, that night, and then we went to San Bernardino and stayed, I think, 2 nights while he was being discharged.
What did you do after the war?
we drove back to New Mexico to see my folks, and then is that when we went to, I think we went to Oklahoma to see his uncle, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And spent a couple of nights with him, and then we drove back to California, and he went to work for Standard Oil.
Did you have anything else that related maybe to Dad's military service or wartime experiences that kind of affected the rest of your life or your spiritual outlook, what you've done the remainder of your life?
Well, I think we never take life for granted after or during a war, because life is so precious.
During the war, did you feel the support from your family?
Oh,
and your
yes,
community?
yes. I had lived in the same community all my life, so, and everybody was losing sons or, you know, relatives at that time, so it was a very close-knit community.
What did you feel personally was accomplished as a result of the Allied victory of the war?
Well, with the Hitler being obliterated, and Japan was no longer
A threat.
a threat, and it was supposed to be the war to end all wars, and here we are again.
How do you feel about the U.S. flag, and did those feelings change from your wartime experiences?
No, I don't think so, because I grew up saluting the flag every morning at school, and it was something that we took very seriously.
What role do you think patriotism should take today?
A very strong role. I get very upset with people who well, how do I want to say it? That
Burn the flag, spit on the flag?
yeah, that destroy our flag or use it in an unpatriotic manner,
We're gonna take the Pledge of Allegiance out away from the school.
and taking God out of our Pledge of Allegiance, and I think it's all wrong.
Why don't you ask the last question there?
From all that you've seen and done in your life, what advice would you want to pass on to the coming generation?
Well, keep your standards and your morals as high as possible, because once they're gone, they're gone. It's hard to get them back.
Good job, Mom.
That's excellent.
Very
I want
good.
you to know that last comment you just made, that was made by two other people who we interviewed. These were World War II veterans that spoke about the same kind of sentiment that you did, that to keep your morals and values to a high standard. To them, that was a very important issue as well.
Well, it is to me too. I just some of these people on TV and some of the programs that we have are destroying us.
Yeah, I didn't used to believe that, but she's right.
Yeah, she is.
These, no, they're disgraceful.